Hi, my name is Mike Lawrence. This video is one of a set which is intended to provide a different interpretation of the experimental results that constitute the foundation of current physics. It is clear that the present explanation for what we see in the universe is good in many ways, but it is missing an overall coherence. My view is that we need to look at physics with new eyes and consider an interpretation that explains most things well, even if it does question just about everything. I do not disagree with any experimental results, only the interpretation of those results. And I do not say that the hypothesis that I'll be talking about in these videos is the theory of everything, and that everything I suggest is correct, but it is a start. Each video in the set will cover an aspect of physics. The whole set needs to be understood together in combination, because many aspects rely on each other, and any one taken on its own may not be convincing to those relying on the current interpretations, some of whom may actually be offended by the hypothesis. There will be links in the videos to other videos in the set that cover closely related or overlapping aspects. Within the boxes in the videos are representations of the motions of the particles and their composites, which I will be explaining more fully. I'm happy to answer questions where I can, perhaps providing links to where a deeper mathematical analysis shows why I say what I do, since equations and graphs do not make good videos, and will post replies where appropriate on Twitter. I hope you enjoy the videos and they enable you to better appreciate the absolute symmetry and simplicity of nature. But please remember, I'm not an experienced presenter, and although I state everything as if it were correct, this is only a hypothesis. This is video number 10. Why the angular frequency of a loop is a half omega rather than omega and other halves. When considering the motional energy of a loop, or one of its constituent meons, it is the mass kinetic energy that is considered. The energy is looked at from a relativistic standpoint as the relativistic gamma function less 1 times the meon mass and light speed squared. For low rotational velocities, which is the case for normal energies we experience, meon speed in an electron is about 2 times 10 to the minus 8 times light speed, or 0.6 meters per second. We can use a half the meon mass times velocity v squared. The relativistic half is the same factor when looking at the same energy in terms of rotational frequency through v equals r omega, the velocity of the meon and its rotational radius multiplied by its angular frequency, to give a half h omega. The two loops for a photon would produce twice that at h omega. However, the mass angular momentum of each meon is positive or negative Planck's constant h, so to square the circle, so to speak, we need to instead consider that, for a loop, rather than the usual way of splitting the charge-related spin energy, the same size but opposite type to the mass energy, as a half h times omega, it should be h times a half omega. This requires that the velocity, instead of v, be reduced to v divided by the square root of 2, and the radius increased by the square root of 2 times r. This does not change the energy and momentum values, only how they are split between properties, so there is no overall change. There are many occurrences of halves and 2 pi's in physics which serve to confuse, apart from the angular frequency of the loops. Generally, when considering loops, there is one source of halves, but it appears in 2 guises. The first is, as mentioned above, because the angular momentum of the meons is always h, and so if the loop energy is a half h omega, then the half is owned by the omega, not the h. The second is the kinetic energy of the meons in a loop at low energies. The total energy of meon is the relativistic energy mc squared, with the kinetic component, the relativistic constant less 1 times mc squared, which is a half mc v squared. This factor of a half will be larger as the energy of the meon increases, so once more, the half is owned by the velocity squared, not the mass m, and the 2 treatments are consistent. In the case of an orbital system, only half the energy is considered in the spectra, and so only that is included. That half is the mass kinetic energy. The charge-related spin kinetic energy is ignored. The charge kinetic energy is the energy of the spin of the electron at a half h omega, as mentioned above. This energy is the opposite type to the mass energy, and the 2 are always equal and opposite, totaling 0. When in a rotational system, the 2 kinetic energies both act outwards from the center of rotation, and the result in relativistic quantum energy level equations is that the kinetic energies should be mv squared times the function of the principal constant azimuthal number and magnetic numbers and spin numbers, not a half mv squared times those quantum numbers. When considering an orbital charge systems, the loop magnetic moment mu times c is equal to a half qvrc, and it's the charge equivalent of the mass angular momentum h when considering the circumference around which a charge rotates. The mass angular momentum includes both mass and spin kinetic energy components and is therefore nh over 2 pi equals mvr, twice the charge equivalent when adjusted for relative charge and mass sizes in the n equals 1 state. The 2 pi factors appear in orbital systems only, not in the loops. For a loop, h equals mvr. The equivalent for an orbital system, as said, was nh over 2 pi equals mvr. Double adjusted SI units use only the non-2 pi system whenever possible to simplify understanding. Related videos would be 1. The basic underlying structure of the universe, and 21. Energy, force and inertia. Thank you for watching.